I didn't like how things ended in Minnesota. I didn't feel like I was given an opportunity to prove myself to get playing time. So I'm going to prove that here.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Today we're going to be looking back at Wednesday's 8 games and previewing Thursday's 6 games across the NBA. Michael Bolton.
Let's get to it.
All right, let's get to it indeed. We will start where we always do.
Monstrous line of the night.
And by always do, I mean literally always do, because the monstrous line of the night is the same once again. It is James Harden of the Houston Rockets, who has gone for another 50-point performance. 58 points in an overtime loss to the Nets. 45 minutes, 58 points, 5 triples, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block, and a blistering 21 of 23 from the free throw line. Harden has now scored 115 points in the last 2 games, which is just nonsense to say out loud, really. He is the number 1 player in fantasy basketball. The last month he is averaging 42.5 points, 6 triples, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, 2 steals, and 0.8 blocks. Those numbers are absolutely absurd. That's the right word. He is just putting up numbers which, honestly, they're not sustainable at this level, because who can? But of course, there's 16 games worth, at least, of massive product. He is the number 1 player so far this season. He looks to be in the box seat to be the number 1 player for the rest of the year. The numbers here are just absolutely astonishing. Yes, there will be a reduction when Chris Paul comes back and when Eric Gordon is back in business in a full capacity. But man, these numbers are just unbelievable with what he is doing at the moment. 40% usage he has so far this season, with a true shooting of 62%, and that's not even including all the other peripheral numbers that James Harden puts up. Just another masterful fantasy basketball night from James Harden.
Waiver wire line of the night.
The waiver wire line of the night goes to Jay Crowder of the Utah Jazz. Crowder still coming off the bench here, but played 29 minutes compared to the start of Derek Favors' 22 minutes. 23 points for Crowder, 5 triples, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block, and did it very efficiently. He is really up and down. His last game had 2 points. In fact, his previous 4 games combined for just 25 points, and he had 23 in this one. So it's safe to say this one was a little bit out of the box. Over the last 2 weeks, he hasn't even cracked the top 250 in fantasy rankings, and he's not a top 150 player for the season. I think he's better viewed as a back-end 14-team league guy with the ability to occasionally put these games up, and more of a must-roster 16-team league guy who had some stretches of good play early this season but hasn't been able to continue that. Shooting under 40% from the field this season, under 72% from the line, and under 33% from 3. 2 years ago, he shot 40% from 3, which never made sense because he's always been a bad shooter, and just that one weird standout season in Boston, it was putting up good numbers, and he had big steal. He had these 2 weird years in Boston. One where he had big steal numbers, which made him a top 55 player, and another year where he shot 40% from 3, which made him a top 70 player. And since then, he has been terrible. And it's really weird to see those 2 weird standout performances from Crowder. So he was a strong player here, available in a lot of leagues. He's probably available in too few leagues, to be honest. I think he probably should be on more waiver wires than he currently is, but enough shitting on Jay Crowder. The deep leaguer of the night goes to Javon Carter. He had himself a good old Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
Yes, Javon Carter had 8 points, 2 rebounds with 5 assists, and of course that Richie Beno, 2 threes, 2 steals, and 2 blocks as he fills in that role left some by Kyle Anderson and some of the backup point guard role. He started last game and didn't get to 20 minutes, came off the bench in this one and played 28 of them. He's been in the rotation regularly, apart from that one bullshit where they took him out so Shelvin Mack could play. In the last 2 games, he has had 8 points in both of those, with 2 triples in both of those. He is a bit of a fiend in terms of getting steals, so that's something to bear in mind with Carter if you're looking for a steals stream sort of a guy. But we're talking really, really deep league stuff. I'd be happy if he took all of Shelvin Mack's minutes when Anderson was healthy, and if he could get 22 or 23 minutes a night here, it would be pretty interesting. But it is still just for deeper leaguers. He's rostered in just 0% of Yahoo leagues, so 20 teamers. I'd add him, and I'd probably consider doing it in 18 teamers as well, just to see where this goes, especially while Kyle Anderson is currently sidelined. Let's move on to the next award.
Young Gun of the Night.
The Young Gun of the Night, it goes to Jarrett Allen of the Brooklyn Nets. I said this 2 days ago, I think it was, that I think with the way the Nets are playing and them pushing for the playoffs now, that Kenny Atkinson has to just start giving his best players more minutes, and we saw that in the last game with Jarrett Allen, and we definitely saw it here. 43 minutes in the overtime victory against the Rockets, 20 points, 24 rebounds with 3 blocks. His last 4 games, in fact, have been really, really strong. He has had at least 2 blocks in all of them, and he has had a combined 12 blocks in those 4 games. He's had double-digit rebounds in 3 consecutive games. In fact, his last 2 games, he has combined for 39 points and 36 rebounds with 7 blocks, and he's played 76 minutes in those games. This is what we hope that Allen could become this season, a guy who could maybe play 30 minutes a night, block a shit ton of shots, grab rebounds, be a Clint Capella type of player, but he had the handbrakes really placed on him early by Atkinson, but over these last couple of games, over the last 2 weeks, he's a top 30 player, 28 minutes a night, 14 and 11, and what he's doing there's nothing stupidly unsustainable. 14 and 11, is that crazy? No. 2.4 blocks, is that crazy? It might be marginally elevated, but it's not stupid. 59% from the field for a rim running center, not stupid as well. 79% from the line, he's a solid free throw shooter. Like, nothing there is crazy. You could nitpick and say, well, he won't get 2.4 blocks, and I understand that. He may not be able to maintain 14 points. I understand that as well, but it's not outrageous to think that he could have this sort of a line for the rest of the season. He probably won't. I'm not projecting him to do that. But this block increase, this minutes increase, is really, really interesting here from Jarrett Allen, and it is something that I think as the Nets continue to push towards a playoff spot, we're going to have to see Atkinson rely more upon him as he becomes more of a force in really, he's started for 1 full season. He didn't start until the second half of last season. He's starting now, and I think we're starting to see the production for Allen, reflect a guy who's had a full season of starting in the NBA under his belt, and it's going to be a really intriguing watch to see where this goes from here and whether he can maintain this level of production. I've still always got my doubts about what Atkinson's going to do, but I do think that they are sort of transitioning here into full, let's make the playoffs, let's ride our better players and get some bigger numbers coming their way so that they can really start to push and solidify themselves into the playoffs. The dud of the night is Tristan Thompson of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Thompson struggled his way through 21 minutes, 4 points and 8 rebounds on 2 of 6 shooting. This is what I think they should be doing with him more often. I really like Ante Zizic. I'd like to see Larry Nance when he comes back. Kevin Love, of course. Now Zizic played 27 minutes here. Thompson didn't have foul trouble in this game. He did struggle against the Blazers, and I'd be a little bit worried. Now, you haven't invested much capital in rostering Thompson. You didn't put a high draft pick on him. You probably didn't give up too much in a trade to get him. But I worry that this could become more of a pattern for Thompson as we move forward. In a 10-team league, I'd likely feel more comfortable streaming his spot. In a 12-team league, I'd be looking to see who's out there, but I am a little bit concerned about what this is going to mean for Tomo as we move forward, where his minutes go as more of these guys come back. The fact that Drew went to Zizic over him here in this role is really curious to me, and then adding those other guys back into the mix, I think it really does make you think pretty significantly about what his role is going to be moving forward, and I would think that it means that at some point we're going to get a reduction. It might not be next game. He might not be a 21-minute a game guy. In fact, he probably won't be. But it is an interesting insight into where this team is headed. The plus-minus goats of the night, the best net rating went to Jakob Poeltl of the San Antonio Spurs, a plus 122.4. He was really strong. He is clearly at this point a better player than Pau Gasol. And the worst net rating went to Cedi Osman at negative 82.1. I thought this could be a big season for Osman. I was clearly wrong on that. He has struggled significantly. The Cavs do force him into large roles pretty much every night, which he probably isn't suited to. I thought he could step up. he hasn't been able to step up, and he's been a real disappointment so far this season. Let's look at some injury news. Wendell Carter Jr. had an MRI on his knee that was clear, and then had a thumb issue, and the initial reports are that it was a bad one, and he was going to miss multiple weeks with a potential torn ligament or fracture, and that's what we were bracing for. And then it turns out that no, there's no ligament damage, and no, there's no fracture, and he's going to miss Thursday's game, but he's just considered day-to-day at this point. So that's great news for Wendell Carter Jr. It would have elevated Bobby Portis and Jabari Parker, but it doesn't appear like it's going to be a long-term scenario here. LeBron James is out for the next 2 games and then looking to return after that. I've talked about this quite a bit. A lot of people, or maybe not a lot, but a few people had LeBron at number 1 or number 2 or even in their top 3 in fantasy drafts based on the fact of his durability and the fact that he played 82 games last season. And I constantly stress to you, a guy doesn't get injured until they do, and a guy is injury prone until they're not. And we're seeing that play out all over the place. All I need now is for Karl Anthony Towns to get injured to really prove that point. But there's many guys who are Iron Man, and LeBron has been an Iron Man, but he played 82 games exactly once in his career. So that's, look, 78, 77, 76 games, they are all strong from LeBron. But heading to a situation in LA where he was likely not going to play as many minutes, plus the age of him, and the fact that he wasn't going to play those 82 games was a silly sort of reason to pick him at that level in a draft, when even last season on a per game basis, he was only the 4th ranked player, and that was his highest finish in about 5 seasons. I just use this as, again, just and people are going to argue, oh yeah, he's so durable, and he is. There's no doubt that he is super durable. But I don't think that having a guy play 82 games in one season should be the basis for you to ignore his per game production when things can happen at any stage. And when you're older, and James is old, soft tissue injuries do become a little bit more prevalent. This is one of the worst injuries that James has had to deal with in his career. Talking about another injury, this is at least a positive. DeMarcus Cousins will be back for the Warriors next game on Friday. Expect very little from him, at least for the initial periods of his stint back. Big men, Achilles, it's a bad combination. The Warriors don't really need him to be in there playing big minutes. I think it could be a while before we see solid production from Boog. Tyus Jones is in a walking boot for the next few days, and then will be day-to-day after that. So I think that's a pretty good sign. I still expect him to miss a week and a half to 2 weeks with this ankle injury. Of course, he can be dropped if you had him in 12 or 14 team leagues. Eric Gordon had to leave today's game with knee soreness. It was his game back. I don't think we should be too alarmed with this scenario. He said it was to be expected after not playing for that long with a bone bruise and then having a bit of soreness in your knee. That's fine. Maybe he misses a game or 2. I don't think that he will, but we'll see how that goes. Well, Tone Snell injured his thumb. He thinks he'll be fine. He only played 5 minutes, left the game, didn't return. They didn't really need to, as they absolutely pasted the Grizzlies in that third quarter. But I don't think too many people are hanging their fantasy hats on the health or injury status of Big Bad Tone Snell. Let's move into these games, break them down with a little bit more detail. The first game that we take a look at, if I can just get my face up on the screen, is the Orlando Magic and the Detroit Pistons. An overtime game, the Pistons win 120-115. Terry Ross, he's in really strong form at the moment. 33 minutes, 24 points with 6 triples and a steal and a block. He's benefiting from the fact that John Simmons is out of the rotation, as he should be, because he's not good. But Ross is also going through a hot streak. Top 75 over the last 2 weeks, playing an extra 2 minutes in that time frame, but shooting 40% from 3. He's also seeing his usage bump by almost 2 percentage points in that time. He's fine as a back-end 12-team league guy. He's a must roster 14-team league guy. And in 12s, he's an okay fringy sort of guy. 10-teamers, I'd say he's probably more of a stream guy than anything else. But a strong performance there. Vooch had 24 and 13, and Fournier bounced back with 18, 2 and 5. He's got a very good record against Detroit in the past. Augustin had 13, 3 and 7. He's a fringe 12-teamer as well, while Gordon struggled his way for 12 and 8. I guess the positive here for John Isaac is he played 33 minutes, didn't do too much, and the defense was lacking. And in deeper leagues, Isaiah Briscoe is the backup point guard now. He had 5 assists, and anytime you can get 5 assists, it's worth noting. So Briscoe is that guy at the moment. For the Pistons, Griffin had 30 with 5 assists and 2 blocks, strong from him, while Drummond had 14 and 22. At least he didn't miss any free throws. And there's just a bunch of weirdness with this lineup. The Shark, Bruce Brown, played 22 minutes and had 8 points with 2 triples, but that's 2 games with Ish Smith back that we've seen Brown's minutes reduce. So that is worth noting. He was providing okay numbers, but it has dropped off a bit. Reggie Bullock, 6 assists. He's had that a couple of times this season, increasing his playmaking. He needs to do that to be a must-roster 12-team league guy. He's not there yet. He's still more of a streamer type player. Well, Ish Smith had 22 points. The percentages were horrendous, 1 of 7 from the field. But the 22 minutes in his second game back, with 3 assists, puts him on the fringe of, say, 14-team league value. While the Duck, Luke Kennard, shot well, had 14 points in 26 minutes. But I'm going to need to see more consistency from him and from Casey with his rotations to really look at him anything more than the deepest of formats. Next up, we look at the Milwaukee Bucks and the Memphis Grizzlies. It doesn't look like much of a pummeling, 111 to 101. The Grizzlies were up in the first half, and then Milwaukee just went absolutely bananas in that third quarter and just put this game away. You can see Giannis played just 22 minutes. He had 4 fouls, so that limited him, but 27 and 11, a steal, 2 blocks, 71% from the field, and, hallelujah, 88% from the free throw line. So a massive game from Gianni. Bledsoe only needed 25 minutes, 16, 2, and 4 with 3 steals, but the steals are coming back from Bledsoe. Middleton only 27 minutes, Lopez 25, Brogdon 26 minutes, and Brogdon has now missed a free throw in back-to-back games, and that is astonishing. I mentioned this a couple of days ago that he would not be able to keep up that free throw pace, and now he's gone out and turned into a shit free throw shooter overnight, so I apologise to anybody who hails Malcolm Brogdon. The encouraging thing in this game was the play of Sterling Brown. He was weirdly out of the rotation to begin the season, I think because he was fat. But he's in form now, 11, 7, and 4, a steal and a block with 2 triples, really good shooting. He should be playing over Tony Snell every night, over Pat Connaughton every night, and he seems to be that guy. So he has some deep league appeal. I think he can maybe have a couple of seasons in the NBA of top 120 value. I do like Sterling. I'm not sure it will ever be on this team, though. DJ Wilson, absolutely dreadful last season, but been fantastic this year. 13 points, 3 triples in 23 minutes with 2 blocks. Clearly outplayed Thon McCare for that backup center role, and in deeper leagues, he's available in 100% of leagues, allegedly, on Yahoo. So, 20-teamers, 18-teamers, shit, I would even consider it in 16-teamers because he is outplaying Ersan Ilyasova at the moment. He is definitely worth looking at in some of those formats. For the Grizzlies, Jaren Jackson Jr. got into foul trouble. What a shocker. 7 and 5 with 2 steals and a block, while JaMychal Green stepped up 14 and 10, a steal, 3 blocks, did a lot of damage in the first half, shot poorly. He's more of a 14-teamer than a 12-teamer. Justin Holiday got his first start for Memphis and then committed 2 stupid fouls and then didn't return in the first half. Ended up with 17 minutes. The 4 steals is nice. The 1 block is nice. The 17 minutes aren't nice, but you could make the argument that he starts next game and plays 25 or 26 minutes. I'm still not adding him in 12-team leagues because he just isn't that good of a player. Gasol had 14, 4, and 5 in his 25 minutes. A disappointing night there, no doubt. While the guy who continues to benefit the most from Kyle Anderson's absence is Omri Caspi. 36 minutes here, 17 and 6, and he has some appeal, short-term at least, in 16-teamers, while Garrett Temple just the 21 minutes, and he struggled his way to 2 points in that time. And the Grizzlies, I don't know, man, they just continue to look like a disaster so much of the time. The Toronto Raptors and the Boston Celtics. The Celtics get the big win, 117-108. The fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
33 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 4 steals for Kawhi with 2 triples. Strong from him, 11 of 11 from the line as well, while Lowry had a 1-1 with 7 assists, and Dan Green, a nice offensive explosion from Green, 15 points with 3 triples. Still more of a specialist type of 12-team league player. Siakam struggled, 6 points, but the 7 assists there, definitely surprising.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
You'll take that, although his production from the start of the season has clearly dipped. While Serge Ibaka had a weird game. 22 and 10 is great. No peripheral numbers, poor free throws, and an absolutely astonishing 21 field goal attempts from Serge Ibaka. DeLon Wright was a disaster. He had a 12 trillion in this game. For Boston, Kyrie had 27 with 18 assists, 5 rebounds, a steal, and a block. He has been, since the first 2-3 weeks of the season, he has been ridiculous. While Al Horford, if you have him, you're really relieved by this. 34 minutes, 24 and 7, 2 blocks, but those 34 minutes is almost the key thing here, the fact that he played this much. Gordon Hayward was also much better, 18 points, but still, only 24 minutes. 5 assists, and it took 62% shooting to get him to this level. I'm still a little bit cautious. Marcus Smart was back. He had 3 assists and 3 steals, continues to be a specialist, much like Danny Green for 12-teamers, while Jason Tatum had 16 and 10. And Marcus Morris, this is a couple of stinkers in a row for Morris. This is back to the Marcus Morris we've seen for every year of his career, apart from the first 40 games of this season, and it's a little bit worrisome. If anyone wants to give you a top 80 player in exchange for Marcus Morris in a trade, I would do it immediately because I do worry about him significantly. While Jaylen Brown, back to a bench role, back to a lower role, 7 points with 5 rebounds and 23 minutes. I saw a debate on Twitter today that people were talking about, that would you have Jamal Murray over Brandon Ingram and Jaylen Brown? And so many, no man, Jaylen is so much of the better player, and I just don't believe it. And for fantasy, it's pretty clear. I just mean in real life as well. I think Jaylen is a touch overrated, though he obviously had some strong performances last season. The next game was the overtime victory by the Nets on the road against the Rockets. What a game this was. What a performance from Brooklyn. At the start of the season, I had Kenny Atkinson in my top 3 for Coach of the Year, and it seemed a little bit wild at the time, and at the start of the season, it seemed a bit dumb, but the way this team is playing, it's been absolutely fantastic to watch. Dinwiddie, who'd been quiet of late, really bounced back. 33 points, 10 assists on 59% shooting. The usage way up as well. Now, he had been really minimalised of late with D'Angelo Russell getting the bulk of that playing time. He struggled a little bit here, D'Lo. 10 points with 7 assists in his 28 minutes, but I'm not overly worried about that. Rondé Hollis-Jefferson returned. He played 7 minutes. Ed Davis, he played 7 minutes. And Shabazz Napier returned. He played 8 minutes. So a real narrowing down of the rotation. Now, I don't think 7 minutes for Rondé or Ed is a realistic proposition moving forward, but it's worth watching. Tamari Carroll played 35 minutes, had 22 and 5. He's looking much better of late. He's more of a 14-teamer or a 12-team streamer, while Rowdy Rodion's Crooks had 14 and 5 with 2 assists and a steal. His playing time and his role is going to be really, really interesting once the Blue Swimmer returns. Also, shout out Trevion Graham, whose first 2 starts were atrocious. He was good. He has 7 of 9 shooting, 21 points, 5 rebounds. When Dudley returns, he's likely just not to be in the rotation. For the Rockets, Eric Gordon, 20 points in 21 minutes, 4 triples, 2 assists and a steal. He is a must-roster player while Chris Paul is out, but when Paul returns, I don't think he's going to be that guy. Well, James Nunnally took the Daniel House role, played 25 minutes, hit 3 triples, 9 points, 2 assists. This is a guy that shot over 50% from 3 in Europe last season. And I think he had 3 consecutive seasons of shooting 45% from 3 or above. Like that. You might want to fact-check me on that. But he is going to fit this team really well and can be a deep league source of 3-pointers. Marquise Chris continues to be the worst player in the NBA. The Rockets decided to start not with Nene at center. They started Gary the Comet Clark. Now, Clark had 2 steals and 2 blocks, had 8 rebounds. He can be a deep league streamer for defensive numbers if they continue to go with this configuration, while Austin Rivers played 46 minutes, 13, 5, and 6, a steal and a block. He's okay to sort of bludgeon his way to numbers at the moment, but that is going to drop when Paul returns and when Gordon gets back to full steam ahead. I might have to talk about PJ Tucker, who was great as well. 20 and 10, 3 triples, 2 steals, and a block. We've seen PJ have a couple of offensive outbursts recently. It's clearly not sustainable, but this was a big, big performance from PJ. I look at him more as a 14-team league guy who can be streamed in 12-team league scenarios. The next game up is the Dallas Mavericks. They hosted the San Antonio Spurs. They lost 105-101. Pirtle, who we talked about earlier, only the 20 minutes, but 6 and 7 with 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block on a perfect 100% shooting is a strong night. He's got some 16-team league value. Patty Mills had 14 points with 4 triples. Bertans chipped in with 4 triples, and Bellinelli chipped in with 3 triples. The starting lineup can't shoot threes, but the bench, that's all they do, and they combined here, if you can't add those up, for 11 triples. Really strong performances. Really, all of those guys, nice 14-team league 3-point streamers. DeRozan's struggles, and I use that loosely, but his struggles continue. 40 minutes, 14 points, 9 assists. No peripheral numbers as well. He has really dropped off of late. Well, LaMarcus Aldridge, foul trouble limited him to 23 minutes, and that legendary efficiency was absent. He was just 4 of 11 from the field, 36%, but did block 3 shots. I wouldn't panic. Rudy Gay returned, 14 points in 22 minutes. The wrist is still clearly bothering him. He was flexing it quite a bit, so that's something to watch. While Derek White put up a real turd here. Foul trouble limited him, 4 fouls in 24 minutes. Still had 2 steals, 6 points and 2 assists. I'm not making a panic move based on this. For the Mavericks, Doncic had 25, 8 and 8 and hit both his free throws, so that's a positive. Or DeAndre Jordan blocked 2 shots as well. And Maxi Kleber got another start, 7 points, 2 triples, 4 steals and a block. For the time being, he has 14-team league value, maybe 12-teamers. Now, when Dennis Smith returns, I don't know what that does to Kleber. I don't know if it affects him that much. But the thing to watch is if Smith gets traded, which I think is almost going definite. I'd get as close to definite by saying it's a 50% chance of happening for Smith getting traded. Who returns? Is it a power forward wing type player? And if that's the case, then Kleber's in real trouble. But he could have sustained top 150 value for the rest of this season with the way things are going. Wesley Matthews chimed in with 13 points. He's a fringe 12-teamer, more a 14-teamer, while the pencil Harrison Barnes, 11 points on 4 of 18 shooting is horrendous, quite clearly. 8 rebounds and 3 assists. He's more of a points league than a category league guy, but he still is obviously a guy that we want to roster in those formats. 10-team category league. No, I think he's a waiver wire guy in a 10-team league. And in a 12-teamer, he's really not that good, to be honest. And I think you're all well aware of that at this point. The Cavs got smacked by the Blazers, 129-112. I referenced Ante Zizic earlier, 27 minutes, 16 and 8 with 2 blocks. Give him 25 a night, and he is a must-roster player. Getting to that number is going to be the hard thing. Well, Jerome Blossom game played 29 minutes, God knows why. 8 and 10 with 2 blocks there. Jordy Clarkson, 29 minutes, 22 points with 3 assists. It's very hard to rely upon his production, but he can be a 12-team league guy. But he's that guy on your 12-team roster that when a hot free agent comes up, you drop him and you get someone else in. Rocket Rodney Hood, only the 25 minutes as he returns from injury. 20 points, he can be an interesting points guy. While Cam Payne outplayed Colin Sexton again. 12 points with 2 triples in his 21 minutes, while Sexton had 11, 1, and 1 in 30 minutes, and he is nowhere near a 12-team league guy. I referenced Osman earlier, 4 points with some foul trouble, but only played 16 minutes. An absolute disaster of a performance from Osman. He is just a deeper league guy. Damian Lillard was questionable heading into this one. He had 33 points in 32 minutes on just 19 shot attempts, so safe to say he was feeling pretty good. While Yusuf Nurkic had the old fat face Ray Felton triple-double, 10 points, 10 rebounds, 10 assists, and added in 5 blocks. What a stretch this has been from Nurkic, and hit all 4 of his free throws. Fantastic. Jake Layman went off, 18 points on 73% shooting. Go back and look at Jake Layman's game logs. When you see a big scoring performance, it's almost invariably paired with like 70% shooting, and then he goes back to being nothing. But as long as Mo Harkless is out, Layman can have maybe 16-team league value. The Chief, Al-Farouq Aminu.
Sometimes may be good, sometimes may be shit.
Do I have to retire this for Aminu? Do I have to be transferred? Hey, let's take suggestions. Who do you think should be the new sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit guy? Because of the way that Aminu is playing, I don't think he's that inconsistent anymore. I'm going to say Langston Galloway is that guy, but I'm open to suggestions for who is the new guy. Because Aminu had 14 and 9 with 2 threes. Now he shot 6 of 7 for 86%, so he could easily come and shoot 20% next game, but he's really playing well at the moment. CJ McCollum loves playing Cleveland, 19 points on just 13 shots. Not much else to really talk about from that game. Let's move on to the next one. It was an absolute barn burner. The Golden State Warriors beat the Pelicans 147-140. Tone Davis, 30 and 18 with 6 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks. Fantastic. While my man Nick Mirotic dropped 29 points in 29 minutes, hit 6 triples, a steal, and a block on 64% shooting. He loves, for whatever reason, loves playing the Warriors. He should start. He should play more minutes than Julius Randle. Now, that did happen in this game, not the starting, but the more minutes. Whether Gentry does that or not remains to be seen, but this is a great step forward. Just the 22 minutes for Randle, who was in some foul trouble, but was outplayed also. 23 and 7 with 3 triples. Now, that 3 threes from Randle, that is a miracle to get that sort of production from him. Strong game from him, but I do just worry, as I've said many times. Drew Holiday, 25, 6 and 7, and Lord Alfred Payton, 7, 5 and 12 with 2 steals. I believe Payton is a 12-team must-roster player. Each one more played well. He scored 17 points. He didn't do anything else, but he is still just more of a 14-team league sort of a guy. On to the Warriors. Curry had a ridiculous game, 41 with 9 triples. That is 3 consecutive games with at least 9 triples, with at least 7 triples. Durant had 30 and 15 with 2 steals. Draymond had 17, 6 and 14, and Clay had 19 and 7 with 4 threes. So they're all-stars putting up huge numbers in preparation for Cousins' return. Kevon Looney also had a strong game. That's 2 big games in a row from Looney. 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and 2 blocks. But this is his last regular start of the season. He will start the games that Boogie sits out. But when he does in those games, he's worth a stream in a 14-team league format. Not much else really happening with that Warriors rotation, I don't think. The next game to look at is the Utah Jazz and the Clippers. Rudy Gobert, ridiculous, 23 and 22 with 4 blocks, and he was 9 of 10 from the free throw line. He is on a massive hot streak at the moment, Gobert. Really putting together a strong run of performances. This sort of game is huge, and his rank at the moment, top 20 over the last month, shooting 73% from the line, really the only thing that holds him back. Really putting together a great run. Don Mitchell, 28 and 6 assists, 3 steals. And Kyle Korver also is a great three-point streamer at the moment. Royce O'Neal played 36 minutes. That's 3 big-minute games in the last 4, 10 and 7 with a block. Now, he's going to continue to start for at least the next week, and that gives him some 18-team, 16-team stream value. Joe Ingles' assists are up again, 8 assists and 2 steals, only 6 points. The shooting wasn't quite there, while Favors had a double-double in just 22 minutes. On to the Clippers, not great at all. Lou Williams, 23, 6 and 6. That was strong from Lou. Toby Harris was good, 17 and 6, and then there's a lot of nothing. It was a struggle for the table. Montrezl Harrell, 11 and 7 with 3 steals. Beverly did nothing. Gortat did his usual nothing. The Rooster Gallinari was terrible. 34 minutes for 9 points on terrible shooting. Don't panic too much about this, but this was just a disaster. I can see some more shakeups coming. Doc says, I identified the issue with the starting lineup, and it's their defense, and then he continued to not do anything about it. Then he said after this game that, someone asked, is it a scheme thing? Is it a lineup thing? What will you be changing? He said it's a little bit of both. So just watch for that. Does Lou Williams start? Does Harrell come into the starting lineup? Does Gilgeous-Alexander move out? Do they finally banish Avery Bradley, who, if I'm going to be fair, was okay in this game. 15 points in 25 minutes on 6 of 10 shooting, because he has been terrible, but this was a strong performance, but it doesn't really matter when you get your ass kicked by 20 points, which is exactly what happened in this game. All right, let's move on now to talk some DFS action. Starting with the perfect lineups, of course, we'll start with DraftKings, as we always do for the perfect lineups. We had Irving, Harden, JaMychal Green, PJ Tucker, Jarrett Allen, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jay Crowder, and Jake Layman for a total of 412, and that cost $49,900. And then on FanDuel, it was Kyrie, Dinwiddie, Harden, Lou Williams, Mirotic, Crowder, PJ Tucker, DJ Wilson, and Jarrett Allen for a total of 434.6, and that cost the full $60,000. Alright guys, let's take a look at DFS for Thursday's action. We're going to be focusing more on FanDuel pricing today. The DraftKings main slate does not include the early game, which is the London game, and that is the Knicks taking on the Washington Wizards. The Wizards are 6.5 point favourites in this game. The total is 228. As I said, it's in London, so it is earlier than the other games. I believe it starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time. So on FanDuel, again, where you don't have late swap, it's a little bit risky to be playing on this slate. You might want to look at the main slate, which is the 5-game slate of all the regularly timed start games, or regular start time. That's the word I'm looking for. Games there, but we'll cover this Knicks and Wizards game. We know that Enes Kanter is out due to the political issues and death threats against him. For the Knicks, we're also checking the status of Tim Hardaway Jr. and Mitchell Robinson. Robinson's been out for ages with ankle and groin issues. Well, Hardaway missed the last game with a hamstring issue. If Robinson's out, all those center minutes are nearly going to go to Luke Cornett and Noah Vonleh, assuming he can stay out of foul trouble. That elevates the role of the Fort, Kevin Knox and Lance Thomas. And if Hardaway is out, you get more minutes from Ntilikina, more minutes from Damo Dotson there as well. And perhaps Mario Hezonja gets a little bit of extra run. At point guard in this one, Mudiay is at 6,600. I think that is way too high for Emmanuel Mudiay, and I would have no interest in him there. Thomas Satoransky at 6,400 is also probably a little bit high, although he does have significant upside. We saw him have that big game just 2 games ago, but he can be a little bit fluctuable, more of a GPP guy than anything else. Ntilikina is not really going to do it for us. At shooting guard, Timmy Hardaway's at 5,700. It's an appealing price, but even before this injury, he had really been struggling. I think it's more for tournaments, and even then, I'm not sure he's going to play well. Brad Beal is crushing it. He dropped a casual 89 points against the Raptors last game. He's now at 10,400, so it is a really elevated price tag, but with what he is doing, and with the Wizards team struggling, and against this level of opposition, I think that Beal is not a horrible guy to look at here as a real anchor in cash lineups. Dotson is at $4,000 and would just be a tournament guy. Alonzo Trier, not much there with him. Otto Porter, I really like, 7,500, great opposition. He's averaging 38 against the Knicks. I don't know if he's going to come off the bench or he's going to start, but we've seen that elevated usage rate really working in his favor, so I like Porter quite a bit here. Ariza's at 6,800. That might be a little bit too high. He did drop 50 against the Raptors. It took 48 minutes to get there. I think that 68 might be a bit high. Well, Jeff Green at 5,400 is probably also a little bit too high. Hezonja is the other one we have to look at, but the salary's risen up to 5,400, and I think that's probably a little bit too elevated for me. I like the Luke Cornett at 5,000. He had 39 last game. He's going to have all the run he can want at centre here, so a real big opportunity for him. The Fort, Kevin Knox is at 53. I like him as an option too, while Vonleh at 53. Well, if he can play 20 plus minutes, which he hasn't been able to do of late, then he's a chance to get that value. That's been a real worry at the moment. His salary dropping by 1,000 is very interesting, and I think he's a strong tournament play, but for cash, he's hard to rely on. I love Tom Bryant here. Love the matchup for him against Cornett or Vonleh. 6,800. I think we're going to have good reliability with him and with Scott Brooks relying on him. So I do like him. While Mitchell Robinson, a little bit hard to get involved with him given how long he's been out and we don't know if he's even going to play here. As I said, DraftKings doesn't have this in the main slate of games, so we're not going to be looking at it from a DraftKings perspective. The next game we look at is the Sacramento Kings and the Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are 2.5-point favourites at home. The total is 230, so a nice high-paced game here, the highest total of the day for the games whose numbers have been released. At point guard, I love Kemba here, 9,200, a really strong, up-paced game. The numbers for him have been improving lately. He dropped 50 in the last one. He's averaged 41 the last 3 times against Sacramento. The increased pace here makes me do look at him quite a bit. 8,600 for De'Aaron Fox I think is a little bit too high. Now, Fox has been good, but weirdly, Jaeger's been limiting him to like 31, 32 minutes instead of 35 minutes, so he can get Yogi Ferrell in there to play him 18 minutes, and that's taking a little bit of the value away from Fox. Now, the matchup is a positive one against Charlotte for Foxy, but that minutes limit, the high price, it's probably not one I want to really invest in. Jeremy Lamb at 5,900 I think is really, really strong for cash. Malik Monk, not interested. And Bogdanovic comes in at 6,200. I like what Bogdan's been doing. I like him here with a really positive matchup, but his recent production hasn't probably quite been living up to that level of salary just at this stage. Bud Hield's at 64. I think if you're going to choose between him and Bogdan, I would take Bogdan personally. At small forward, Bielitsa, Miles Bridges, Justin Jackson are all fades, as is Kid Gilchrist. I think Batum at 5,200 you can have a look as a GPP type of a guy. At power forward, Harry Giles, 3,600. He's giving you 20 a night. And his ability to go for 25 or 20, even higher than that, maybe he can get you to a 40-point game, which is a possibility. Makes him a decent enough GPP guy, and I also think his floor in cash with the drop low score situation on FanDuel, he's in play there. Marvin Bagley at 61, probably a little bit too high as he returns from his knee injury, and Marvin Williams, really just a cash guy with limited upside. At centre, the Hornets centres, I'd fade Bismack and Bill Hernan-Gomez, while Willie Cauley-Stein, 7,600, I'm sorry Bill, but that is a little bit too high. On DraftKings, I like Bogdan at 55, I like Kemba, I like Bagley there at 52, Marvin Williams at 48 also comes across as a pretty strong cash play. Let's go on to the next one, the Philadelphia 76ers against the Indiana Pacers. The Pacers are 3-point favourites, and the total is 224.5. Both of these teams are coming off absolutely huge victories on Tuesday, so I have a little bit of that momentum going in their direction. Injury-wise, we're all clear at this point. At point guard, Corey Joseph at 4,100, Darren Collison at 58. I don't really see the value there. Look, maybe that's a little bit unfair because Collison's been a low-end cash type of a guy. I still don't want to put full trust in that while Ben Simmons has been crushing it, but he is now at 10,700, and I think that's pricing him out a little bit. At shooting guard, Oladipo has been struggling, we know that, and now his salary has dropped to 8,000. This is a great opportunity to throw Oladipo into a tournament, but with how he is playing, the Philadelphia defense, it doesn't make him the best option, but absolutely a tournament guy. Redick at 5,500 is okay for cash, while General Soreness, Jimmy Butler at 8,100. I think it's a bit high for Jim at this point. At small forward, Bojan Bogdanovic is at 5,500. There are better ways to utilise that salary. While Baby Neck Wilson Chandler, strong game last time, 28 points in that blowout against the Wolves. He's at 4,300. I would want nothing to do with that. And Tyreek at 45. He also had the big game in that huge blowout victory. I don't really trust him yet either. Sabonis struggled with some foul trouble last game, but still put up 28 points. And at 7,200, I guess you could consider him. But with Turner back, both him and Thad Young, I think, lose a lot of their appeal. So I'd end up fading those guys. Jonah Bolden went big against Minnesota, 24 points in 16 minutes. I'm not sure that it's really worth using him in tournaments, though. Embiid's at 11,100. I love Embiid. That's a pretty locky cash guy. While Miles Turner at 7,100. Centers have been putting up some pretty decent numbers against the Sixers in general, and Turner himself has been putting up good numbers. I just don't think I can bring myself to having him as a cash play. On DraftKings, Oladipo at 76 is a lot more appealing there. I love Embiid, and Butler at 6,800 is a very, very strong play. He's dropped by $800, so that makes him very, very interesting to me over on DraftKings. Let's go on to the next game. We're looking at the Phoenix Suns and the Toronto Raptors. No spread or total out for this one. We don't have word at the time of recording whether Kawhi Leonard will play in a back-to-back. It would be his first back-to-back of the season. If I had to guess, I would say no, he won't. The Raptors were missing the Jedi, OG Anunoby.
Hello there.
And CJ Miles on Wednesday. So if CJ and OG and Kawhi are all out, there's a massive hole there on the wing. And then you get someone like Norm Powell really step up, DeLon Wright, Fred VanVleet, and maybe even Patty McCaw could get some significant minutes here. Although Powell, VanVleet, and Wright would be your DFS options if that was the case. At point guard, Lowry's at 8,000. There's a real blowout risk here in this game, I believe. I also should have mentioned for Phoenix, Jamal Crawford's missed the last couple of games with a mix of personal and knee issues. He is also listed questionable again in this one. With that knee issue that did cause him to miss last game, and the two prior to that were the personal issues. Lowry's at 8,000, and while I like the matchup in theory, the blowout potential probably makes me fade him away, while VanVleet at 5,000 has real upside, assuming some of those mix of guys that I mentioned, Anunoby, Miles, and Leonard, are sidelined. D'Anthony Melton's at 5,500. He's just giving us 25 a night. I have a little bit of worry there just with how Kokoshkov runs that rotation, and he wouldn't be someone I'd be prioritizing. I like Devin Booker mainly because he comes in at 7,700. Now, he was putrid in that first game back from the back injury, just 18 points in 27 minutes. But I have a fair level of confidence that he can get to 40 points here, which would give him value. Dan Green at 4,900 could also play himself into a cash role if Leonard and Anunoby are both sidelined. DeLon Wright was putrid against Boston, 0 points at 4,500, but the opportunity could arise his way as well. And same as Norm Powell at 36. I think Powell will become a massive cash option if those guys are out. McCall Bridges at 39. Tournament maybe. TJ Warren's at 59. His numbers are dropping, and there's a massive groundswell for him to lose his starting spot in Phoenix. So for now, I'd probably leave him alone. Well, Leonard is at 10,500. I think a lot of people could be off Leonard because of the back-to-back. He could make an interesting GPP guy. That's really about it. While the Jedi, Anunoby's at 3,800. He would be a tournament-type guy, as would Oubre at 5,600, who's putting up 39. In fact, I could see you using Oubre as a cash guy. Serge Ibaka's at 6,400. Good matchup for Serge. Really, really good matchup here against DeAndre Ayton. I think he's worth looking at as a cash center, while Siakam's at 6,700. I think if Kawhi and Anunoby sit, then Siakam does come into play. He struggled a little bit in that Boston game, while Rashawn Holmes is at 4,700. I think that salary takes away a lot of the upside of Holmesy. At center, Ayton's at 7,200. I like the fact that salary has dropped so much. He had 47 the first time out against the Raptors. I'm happy to use him here. I think this is a really good spot for DeAndre Ayton. On DraftKings, we've got Booker and Ayton and Leonard, who are providing a value type options. I'm not sure how Kawhi's going to go, whether he's going to play. And that same GPP type upside for Lowry with some value shining in there for Serge Ibaka as well. And I think we could get a little bit of a bounce back from Pascal Siakam over on DraftKings. All right, let's go on to the next game. We've got the Chicago Bulls and the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets are 12-point favorites. The total is 212 here, the lowest total of the day. Nikola Jokic will be looking to bounce back after that debacle against Golden State, and there's no better team to bounce back against than the Chicago Bulls, especially with Wendell Carter Jr. ruled out due to a thumb issue that looked like it was going to cost him weeks, and now he is just day-to-day. Point guards. Let's look at the Blue Arrow, Jamal Murray. Now, actually, before we do that, I don't know what the Nuggets are going to do. I imagine we could get Fart and Will Barton back in the starting lineup here. Gary Harris also listed as questionable, but I imagine if Harris plays, he will remain on the bench. Blue Arrow, 7,600. Don't want to use that despite the good matchup. While Chris Dunn's at 7,200. Recently, his numbers have dropped well below that $7,200 value point. Zach LaVine's at 6,700, also nowhere near that level of late, just be a tournament guy. His inability to produce in multiple categories is hurting him, while Malik Beasley looks, 4,700, you go, that's okay, this guy's been scoring well. He's doing absolutely nothing else, and it's giving him very little in terms of DFS value, plus the risk of Barton's minutes rising, plus the potential play of Gary Harris. I don't think Malik is really the guy we want to look at. Monty Morris and Torrey Craig also fall into that boat. Barton's at 5,400. I think he's an interesting GPP guy here, while Gaz Harris at 5,000.
My name is Jeff.
I don't think that that's really worth it as he looks to come back from injury. We have to look at Jabari Parker at 4,900, no doubt. He had 31 in 17 minutes against the Lakers. At 4,900 with the absence of Carter, I do think that Jabari is worth looking at because it pushes Portis more across to center, opening up those backup power forward minutes. He'd just be a GPP guy, though. I love Portis here, and me saying I love Portis, you must know it's a good spot. 4,800 for Punch Bob. Great opportunity for him here. Millsap at 6,500. I'm not super keen there, although it is the Bulls, and he could go big. While Markkanen at 6,700 could also be an interesting tournament guy. Jokic at 11,300. That is real smash ability there. And then you've got the Bulls at Robin Lopez. Maybe he starts. His minimum salary. He could be a weird GPP guy. In fact, the last 3 times, weirdly, against Denver, he's averaged 32 points. They've come in 32 minutes, but that's interesting enough there for me. While Mason Plumlee at 5,000. I don't hate Plumlee here as a cash guy. We're seeing a lot more Plumlee-Jokic combinations as Millsap continues to struggle, and big men against the Bulls. It's always a pretty sexy proposition for opponents. On DraftKings, I like Portis, Parker, Markkanen, Jokic. I think even Dunn at 6,200 provides value over on DraftKings. And Millsap, maybe a little bit of a GPP upside play. The last game is the Lakers. They're taking on the Thunder. LeBron is still out. The Thunder are favored by 10, and the total is 226 points here. At point guard, Russ Westbrook, 12.5. That is expensive, but it is usable, no doubt about that. While Lonzo Ball is at 7,700. And Lonzo's been providing that value relatively frequently. I'm still not sure that it's a great DFS play here. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I'm banking on him starting again at 4,500. I like it. Schroeder's at 61. That's probably a little bit too high for a guy who can be inconsistent. While Ferguson, Josh the Hitman Hart, and MC Hamidou Diallo aren't really guys I'm all that keen on. Paul George, I am keen on 10,400. I think you should be looking at a 50-point performance here for him. Really, really strong option, I believe. Brandon Ingram's at 7,300. I actually don't mind that for Ingram as well, but there's probably better options out there. And then at power forward, I like Jeremy Grant, 6,200, really stepping up in Nerlens Noel's absence. And the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma at 75. It's probably just a little bit too expensive. Adams is at 7,800. The only reason I look to use Steve Adams here is this matchup is massively strong for centers, and I think this could work in his favor. While Tyson Chandler might get another start, but I don't think he's a strong play. But him starting takes all of the value away from JaVale McGee. Of course, we don't know for sure whether he will be starting. On DraftKings, Adams and Caldwell-Pope, George, Ingram, and Westbrook all come through as good cash and tournament plays. Schroeder is a much better option on DraftKings, where he comes in at 5,700. Let's look at some studs and values now. On DraftKings, my stud is Jokic against the Bulls, and the value is Punch Bob Bobby Portis at 4,600. My FanDuel stud is Jokic, and my value play is Portis. On Yahoo, my stud is Jokic, and my value play is the Cornetto, Luka Cornet. And then on DraftStars, my stud is Jokic, and my value play is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Pope. Guys, make sure you are checking out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network by telling your smart speaker to play the podcast Locked On and then insert team name there. Maybe it's Locked On Bulls to hear about the Wendell Carter Jr. injury news. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_Beeble and subscribe to this show, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, and on YouTube. Give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and hit that bell so you know when each new episode is released. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. James Nunnally.